Hey there, everybody. We're back with another deck video. This time we're going to talk about the shadow side. So we're going to focus on the yellow Raider culture, which are this sort of Southern men and Easterlings and Corsairs. So we have, much like with our elf deck, we have three variations here of kind of how you can build this. So this isn't going to have a Ringbearer side. This is just the bad guys. So which one do you want to start with? Once again, I'm joined by Eric. So thanks again for coming on. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I'm just going to go left to right here, and we'll start with the Easterlings, and I'll set aside these guys and, hopefully get good angle on these. So the first deck here is Easterling. And so how we know what these decks are based on, obviously a lot of them are in the title, Easterling, but it's actually a printed keyword culture in the body of the text or in the game text, where it says Easterling. And so anything that refers to an Easterling, it's actually a bold printed keyword. So this first deck is based off of Easterlings. And this deck is sometimes called Beasterling because it's basically strategy behind it is to create one extremely beastly companion that cannot be dealt with, one beastly minion that cannot be dealt with. And we'll kind of go through how that is created. But let's focus first on what the minions are that you'll be really loading a lot of stuff up onto. So the first guy here is the Easterling Captain. So he's going to be very critical to the deck. He's one of probably your top minion, if not the top. And so his effect is, let me just read it to you without going into too much detail, but he basically spots burdens to make himself more powerful. And it's always remove 2 to get a strength pump. And the pump is bigger depending on if there's more burdens. So at 2 burdens, you get a strength +2. At 4 burdens, you get a strength +3. And at 6 burdens, you get a strength +4. But you'll see from this deck that really the goal is just to get your opponent to get to 2 burdens, which is very easy to do in Easterling. In most decks with Samson of Handfast running around in movie block, it's actually hard to get to 2 burdens, but Easterling can make it happen very easily. So the goal here would be to get your opponent to 2 burdens so that he can use extra Twilight to pump. So that's one of your 2 key Easterlings. The other key Easterling is the Easterling Army. And so he has a similar effect, except for he exerts to get the strength bonus. So his is spot 2 to get a +1, spot 4 to get a +2, and spot 6 to get a +3. But each of those require him to do an exertion. So that's the other main key beastly Easterling. Then you got kind of a couple more that are really just more filler. They're decent if you need to play them. We've got 2 copies of Easterling Pillager. And then 2 copies of Easterling Regiment. Again, the game text on these is marginal. I'm not going to focus too much on those. Those are just more high-powered Easterling characters is the point of those. And then lastly, you've got 2 Footmen. They're one of the ways that you can give your opponent 2 burdens. So it has an effect of maneuver. If you cannot spot 2 burdens, spot another Easterling and discard a card from your hand to add a burden. So that basically just is an automatic way to get 2 burdens by discarding 2 cards. So got a couple of those in there. There's an even easier way to get 2 burdens, though, or a better way maybe you'd say. And that is the key condition here is called Small Hope. And so the effect here is the same thing. If you cannot spot 2 burdens, exert an Easterling to add a burden. So in this case, I should say it's not exactly the same because you exert rather than discard a card. But the point is this is just another way that you're automatically going to keep your opponent is a condition. So you're automatically going to keep your opponent on 2 burdens with this. The cool thing with this, though, too, is it has an alternate effect of discard this condition to make an Easterling strength +2. So these extras that you have lying around, you just use as pumps then for your big minions. But again, the key is just to make sure that you're keeping your opponent on those 2 burdens. Then the other main things that you do with your Beasterlings is you stack typically 2 different possessions on them. The first of which is the Easterling Polearm. This one is fantastic because it costs 0 and gives it +2 strength bonus. But the effect here, when you get to 2 burdens, bearer cannot take wounds. So any of the archery stuff that you see, or any exert to wound, or even, this doesn't say cannot take wounds except during a skirmish. It just says cannot take wounds. So even if potentially that it would be wounded in a skirmish, it doesn't take wounds. So this just makes your Easterlings impervious to damage. And then the other thing that is nice to stack on your Easterling is the Raider bow. So this is nice because it gives them archer, which is cool. It just gives you an extra wound to throw onto a companion. But the other key thing here is this says ambush 5. So what ambush 5 means is when the Free People's player assigns the bearer of this card to a skirmish, that you add 5 Twilight. So, that basically gives you, even if you spent all your Twilight playing minions and conditions and whatnot, once you get assigned to a skirmish, 5 more Twilight. A lot of these guys are all fierce, and so you get assigned twice. You get 10 Twilight. So it really just gives you an excess of Twilight. Excess of Twilight to sorry, you can tell I'm a Magic player. Excess of Twilight to play some nice events. And this is really the key nice event that you're going to be playing, and that is Red Wrath. So anyone who's not familiar with this event is ridiculous, aside from the fact that it costs 5. But the nice thing is ambush 5, cost 5, very good synergy right there. So you basically ambush, play a Red Wrath, exert a minion to wound a companion he is skirmishing twice. So by the time you win a skirmish and do a Red Wrath, you're doing 3 wounds to a single companion. That is oftentimes just deadly to almost any companion, other than like a Aragorn or a Gandalf that has no wounds on him. So that is just a huge card. So that's part of the big combo, is comboing a Raider bow so that you can get a basically free Red Wrath. And then the exertions, you're always going to be able to exert because the Easterling Polearm prevented you from taking wounds. And that's a key thing, though, when you're playing LOTR to remember, is that even though the end result of a wound and an exertion is the same thing, wounds and exertions are not interchangeable. So something that says cannot take wounds can still be exerted. So you take advantage of that yourself, of course. Then the other thing that is a nice extra surprise, kind of a win more, so you only play 1 of this, is Bold Men and Grim. If a companion's about to be killed, remove a threat to discard a companion. So literally you kill 1 guy, you kill 2 guys is the effect of this one. Because I should have said too, it adds a threat on its own. So it adds the threat and then it removes the threat to discard a companion. So you literally just take the companion off the table. They don't go to the dead pile, but if there's no extra copies of them, they're gone for the rest of the game. And then this is just condition removal, and this is just everyone's favorite Enquea in there to control people from going too big on fellowships. So that's the Easterling, and that's what you'll notice with these Raider men sides is that there's actually not a ton of overlap between them, which I think is pretty cool, even though it's the same block, meaning movie block, the same culture, meaning the yellow Raider men, but you really have 3 complete distinct decks. So let me get into that second one then right away, which is the Southrons. So the Southrons are very archery focused, and your key companion, which most people are familiar with here, is the Desert Lord. He's not particularly special in Southron, other than, again, just statistically, he's going to be your best card, and he has that exert ability, exert him to exert a companion. So that's very strong, of course, but you're going to be full of archery type abilities. You've got the Southron Bowman, who is basically a small version of that, that exert once to exert a companion. So you got 4 of those. Then you've got Elite Archer, who's a medium-sized version of that same thing. So you're kind of playing, like I said, Elite Archer, Southron Bowman, Desert Lord. They're all kind of the same card with different interchangeable statistics. And then we do have, this one is probably the worst of the bunch, but he's just a cheap archer. So he's just himself an archer. And the sight control is not going to happen in this deck. So it's really just a 3 cost, 6 power archer. So just getting more more archery there. Then the couple situational archers that you have that are pretty strong are, you've got the Haradrim Marksman, and his effect is, of course, he's an archer, but while you can spot another man, Raider man, ringbound companions cannot take archery wounds. So this basically will prevent your opponent from using Frodo or Sam to soak up all that archery, and just says, no, you can't put the wounds on those guys. So that's pretty key. And then this one is your most powerful, but the most clunky, which is he's an archer, and then you have to spot another man to play him. But he has this nice effect of exert him and remove a threat to make the minion archery total +1. So you'll get 1 off of him and potentially 2 exertions off of him if you have threats that you can remove. That can really help your archery total get up there quite a bit. Then the other kind of key strategy here is you do have the Seasoned Leader. So the Seasoned Leader is a great card. You know, it reminds me somewhat of like Tale of Gil-galad, where it's giving you some extra vitality on an exerting character. But basically what this does is it makes a Southron enduring, and you can remove a threat to play a condition from your discard pile. So these are so fantastic, because as long as you can keep the threats rolling, you can just keep playing these Seasoned Leaders from the discard over and over. And these aren't unique, so you can have multiple of them on the same guy. So, you know, you could set up like pretty easily, give yourself a Desert Lord, remove a couple threats, and pull a couple Seasoned Leaders out of your discard pile. And then suddenly you've got, a 5 vitality minion that can do 4 exertions. And now suddenly he has enduring. So the 4 exertions you just did added 8 to his power. So he's 19 power. So you're not going to be able to touch him in combat either. So that's kind of the thing, is just keep recurring these Seasoned Leaders is really the name of the game here. Then for adding those threats that you're going to be needing for these cards, the best way is the War Towers, because that's just spot a minion to add a threat, so you automatically get 1. And then you also get an additional threat for each companion over 4. So this is pretty much always going to add 2 threats. And if your opponent decided to go big and try to throw down like 7 or 8 companions, then you're going to be adding 3 or 4 threats, which is just absurd. So we got 3 of those in there. Then the nice thing for this with cycling is you can use Ships of Great Draught here just to cycle some Raider cards out of your hand, and then get stuff back later too if there's some key things that you're really after. And then the last couple things here is Quelled for condition removal, and same Enquea that you're probably used to seeing. So that's the Southron archery, whatever you want to call that variant.
So we kind of had one, like Beasterling. That's a fun term. So like one, like big strong guys, and you have this sort of archery build here, and then I'm curious to see what the Corsair build is here.
Yeah, the Corsair is pretty big and strong too, and these guys are pretty rough. You'll actually see this as a deck fairly substantially in like expanded even, because they're so strong. But
does this have the Peter Jackson card in there?
I think that's Peter Jackson. Yeah.
That's what I think as well. I just was like, I know there's one that's like closer up of him. But I think
that's the one from Black Rider. I think you can see the really close up of Castamir. But yeah, that's the Peter Jackson. I think he's also Albert Dreary from the Fellowship set.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I forget who he is in Return of the King. Oh, he's the just a random Rohan soldier in Return of the King. Like, I forget what it's called, but either way,
it's funny when directors do that. Yeah, they just like stick themselves in. Like, I will be cast in this part as Pirate Lord.
Yeah.
Anyways,
this is definitely his coolest appearance, I would say, in these movies. But yeah, so this deck is really strong and expanded. I think the difference why this wasn't just overwhelmingly popular for Movie Block was because of Galadriel Lady Redeemed, because this deck relies on having a bunch of possessions in play and stacking tokens on those possessions. And that's really hard to do against Galadriel because she just keeps coming through and clearing out your possessions. So I think that's the variant you'll typically see, and expanded will involve just stacking immense amounts of tokens on conditions. This one's a little less centered around that. I'll kind of show you what variant I do with this. But basically, Castamir is one of your key cards. So he has this effect of he's fierce and enduring. So he's going to be incredibly powerful and fight twice. And then you can also play a Corsair to add 2 tokens to a card that already has it. So, you exert him when you do that too. So you get to take advantage of that enduring. Enduring is kind of the mechanic where you want to exert yourself because you get power +2 for each wound. I wish they'd print that on the reminder text. I think for some people who don't know what enduring is, that's not intuitive really, but it basically means +2 for each wound on the character. So the point is, you play him, you play some other cheaper Corsairs, get the wounds on him, and in the meantime, add 2 additional tokens to those Raider cards that you're going to be stacking with tokens. So he's obviously very key for this deck is Castamir. Then the other probably key pirate here is the Corsair Marauder, and what he does is if you can spot another Corsair, you may discard a possession to add 2 tokens to a card that already has a token on it. So that's pretty absurd. Now, by the time Movie Block came along, some of the better stuff like Anduril and some of the Reflections artifacts were actually artifacts, so this guy can't get them. But when you look at any standard thing, possession, the free peoples are typically just going to load up on possessions, and this guy just discards a possession to add 2 tokens. So it's like the cost of him is discarding a possession, and the effect is adding 2 tokens. But it's like do a good cost to get a good effect. So it's pretty absurd. The Marauder, and then the cheap guy that you want to just keep recurring just because he's so cheap is the Corsair Plunderer. He's the one who's just going to be discard 2 cards from hand to place tokens. So he helps you cycle, and he's super cheap. So that's the other main Corsair you're going to see. Then this guy's kind of okay, I guess, in this deck because again, we're not trying to. There is a possession that gives you initiative all the time. We're not trying to do that in this deck. So he's really good if you have initiative all the time, but mostly he's just another Corsair and has decent stats, fierce, 12-3, all that is what he's in here for. But in expanded, you can basically have it so that he has initiative all the time. Then the other really key Corsair card here is the Black Sails of Umbar. So this one is, again, a pretty absurd card because you saw that every card in your deck just stacks extra tokens. And so this is a great one to put them on. It has the effect of remove X tokens to play a Corsair from your discard pile for Twilight cost -X. So even if you get, 7 tokens on here, you're playing a free Castamir from your discard pile. So not only do you don't have to have it in your hand, you're digging it out of your discard pile, it's literally free. So that's the big thing you're stacking up in this format is the Black Sails. Obviously, if you're playing Galadriel, you just burn these right away and don't try to get too greedy with getting free stuff. But overall, it's still worth it because even if you're paying full cost for it, you're getting a character out of the discard, which is a good effect. And then this, we saw earlier, the Ships of Great Draught. This, I think, is one of the major design flaws that Decipher would sometimes do with this game. Sometimes is literally look at these 2 cards. These are 2 different cards, but they could be the same card. Same cost, same type, possession support area, 2 cost. You take the same photo like 3 seconds later, and even the text box has the similar looking stuff. So that's kind of annoying when you play this is like you have to keep looking at which one, and especially if you're across the table from this is like, is that a Ships of Great Draught or is that a Black Sails? Because they literally
are they both from the same set? I forget what they both.
Yeah, they're both literally from the same set too. This is common Siege of Gondor. This is rare Siege of Gondor. So yeah, it's
interesting.
Kind of a design fail. They did that too with, I know, like Aggression, which was a really good dwarven condition. There's like 2 other ones that look exactly the same as it too. So
I guess you only had so much film to use, and I don't know if they had access to the extended editions early on, right? I don't know how that worked. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just teasing because it's like, yeah, they're both 2 very playable cards. It's like, could you at least put that on like a crap card so that it didn't matter? But it's 2 cards that you're going to play in the same deck. But yeah, so that's the same thing. Recursion with the Ships of Great Draught. Cycling through your deck. So this deck cycles incredibly well. Of almost any shadow side, this cycles very well. So this variant that I'm playing plays Raider Halbreds. Again, why I like this is because you just play it down and use it. It's not something that you have to worry about with Galadriel. And this is just really nice with Castamir because instead of, for example, using his printed effect, you can use the effect on the Halbred and basically exert him to add 2. So it's kind of like a similar ambush type effect where this guy is just a 16, but then as a skirmish action, I can exert him up to 3 more times and then add 6 power and suddenly become a 22. And then at the same time, when I did that, I also just added 6 Twilight because every exertion I did added 2. So this Castamir Raider Halbred is a really busted combo too. And it doesn't even really need to be Castamir. Like I said, you could kind of do that same thing with the miniature version of that with the other Corsair guy. Name is escaping me. The Black Numenorean. The Black Numenorean can do a pretty similar imitation of that too. So we got those Halbreds in there. And then similar thing, though, this is where the one overlap I guess you're seeing in my decks is this one also is running Red Wrath because that's the combo here is Raider Halbred with Red Wrath. You exert Raider Halbred to get the extra Twilight, and then you immediately use the extra Twilight to Red Wrath someone. So when you're coming up against Castamir, he's like a, what did I say, 21 power, fierce, and can just wound you twice. It's just an absolute beating. So similar effect to like the Beasterling when you're doing that sort of thing. And then this one is another thing where if you do have extra Twilight in the regroup, you can just discard a companion. And this one tends to keep its minions alive. So similar effect there. And then again, couple Quelled for condition removal. So yeah, those are kind of the differences between those decks. I was going to say, I was going to show this card too, because I do have this right next to it for the variant I play. This is the card I kept talking about for expanded. There's a card called Corsair War Galley that you basically have the initiative all the time if you spot 6 tokens. And so you just play 4 of these and really stack up a lot of tokens. Definitely that works better without Galadriel. And then also if you're doing token stacking, there is a great event, Wind That Sped Ships, that gives you +1 for each token up to +6 and can go back on top of the deck. So that's just a fantastic pump. So that's the other variant you can do is you can take out the Halbreds and the Red Wraths and play, the War Galleys and the Wind That Sped Ships. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Eric, this has been, I feel like we're going to do one of these and this is going to be like a 14-part series, right? However many cultures there are.
It could be.
So folks, if you have questions, thoughts, let us know in the comments. This is a lot of fun to do. We'd love to continue to do this series. And, I think one thing we have to do still is the site pathway that can become maybe a different video or something. But this is going to be kind of an ongoing series. So, feel free to let us know what you'd like for us to do next. But Eric, thank you very much for your time. And everybody, thanks for tuning in, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, man.